Prehistoric Planet is finally back with a brand new season, this time set in the Pleistocene. Is the Apple documentary still as good as the first season, or has it diminished in quality? But before we tackle that question, I need to address something. Why did I not make a video about Prehistoric Planet Season 2? Well, the central theme of my previous video was the All Yesterdays movement and showing dinosaurs in ways they have not been depicted before. And with Season 2, some of that initial groundbreaking novelty is gone. It's more of the same. This is just a Prehistoric Planet expansion pack, to the point where across both seasons, some segments feel outright redundant. There are more ice worlds in Season 2 than there were in the entire Ice Worlds episode of Season 1. And the Islands episode does a much better job at depicting Hatzegopteryx both as a terrifying predator and a magnificent, graceful creature than that one segment of the Forests episode did. And it has become painfully obvious that the showrunners came up with all these individual segments first and then had to arbitrarily stitch them together into thematic episodes later, which is how you end up with a dry field in the Swamps episode and a lush forest in the Desert Lands episode. Also, several of the tropes that I praised Season 1 for avoiding happen to be in Season 2, like mosasaurs spectacularly leaping out of the water, munching on ammonites and plesiosaurs, and dinosaurs like Ornithomimus being reduced to the fast-running prey animals. Even the scenes of predators picking off large groups of babies are starting to feel repetitive. There are still some great segments showcasing new and unusual creatures like Cymosuchus, Austroraptor and Nostosaurus, and unique situations like Icysaurus marching through an active volcano or Quetzalcoatlus bullying T-Rex. Also, Apple clearly heard the criticism of the show feeling too speculative, so Season 2 has one of those Prehistoric Planet Uncovered segments tagged on at the end of each episode. However, these completely ruin the flow of the episodes. Take the final one, for example, North America, my favorite biome. We end with the Nanooksaurus mother feeding her young, see a sweeping shot of their frozen landscape as the music swells, and then we get an explanation of how Triceratops fought each other. And I'm like, those sure are some Triceratops. But this science segment happens to be extremely similar to the science segment of the Swamps episode, which talked about Pachycephalosaurus fighting. It almost feels like this didn't teach me anything new. Prehistoric Planet Ice Age is a welcome fresh coat of paint, just by virtue of being set in an entirely different era ruled by mammals instead of dinosaurs. And while we did previously see dinosaurs in the snow, this season unsurprisingly features more ice worlds than the first two seasons combined. Right from the start we get a cold open showing a woolly mammoth giving birth during a blizzard. It might not be as radical of an introduction to an iconic prehistoric animal as the ocean-going T-Rex, but it serves as the perfect contrast to the dinosaur era of Prehistoric Planet. Even after one of the T-Rex's babies gets eaten, he is somewhat dismissive towards the rest of his offspring. Meanwhile, the survival of the newborn mammoth calf is treated with the utmost importance, and it lays the groundwork for a theme that runs throughout the entire documentary. Mesozoic reptiles are expendable, while mammals are not. It makes sense when you consider that dinosaurs and pterosaurs lay a huge number of eggs, while large mammals are pregnant for months or even years and then give birth to only one or two offspring. So of course they have to be extra protective of every single family member.
In this harsh Ice Age world, looking after each other makes the difference. In the Ice Age, families stick together for longer to help each other out.
I should mention that there was one creature in the Mesozoic Prehistoric Planet with the same strong social bonds, and unsurprisingly it was the plesiosaur, the animal that also gave birth to only one single large offspring. There's a bit less of an All Yesterdays feeling with this season than the previous one, simply because we are so familiar with modern large mammals that there isn't really anything an Ice Age mammal could do that would be unexpected to us. Seeing woolly mammoths in a dust storm might be the most surprising visual in that regard. However, this season does a great job highlighting just how absurd these Ice Age ecosystems were. And the best part is that it is usually backed by science. Lions, hyenas and bears really did inhabit the same European caves, and there are fossil bite marks to tell the tale. Like all mammals, a Smilodon would have to eventually get rid of its milk teeth, and even the double sabers are known from fossil skulls. The Megaloceros has a very distinct pattern that is based on real cave art. The Indonesian island Flores was home to both the dwarf elephant Stegodon and human-sized marabou storks.
Dinosaurs.
Smilodon interacting with terror birds is a common trope in documentaries, but the only terror bird that actually made it to the Pleistocene is the tiny Psilopterus from Uruguay. So the image of the powerful saber-tooth outcompeting the way larger but apparently too delicate terror bird gets completely flipped on its head.
The king has been outsmarted by a couple of birds.
Procoptodon is a kangaroo that was so massive that it was anatomically incapable of hopping. So despite how ridiculous it looks, it must have run around like this. Female moas really were much larger than the males.
She weighs 1/4 of a ton and could kill him with a single kick. And he knows it.
I love the kind of woman that will actually just kill me.
But they like their males small. To woo her, he needs to look as small as possible.
If you look up Short King in the dictionary, there's just a picture of him. Look at his little jumps, he's adorable!
The egg is too delicate for the female to sit on.
And there's even a logical explanation for why the females pick the smallest males. This is not just the writer's barely disguised fetish, I think. Enhydriodon really was a lion-sized otter in Pleistocene Africa, and based on isotope studies, it did eat terrestrial prey, so it inevitably would have come into contact with terrestrial predators. I love how the scimitar cat looks absolutely terrified.
I fear no man, but that thing, it scares me.
The short-faced bear Arctodus is a popular subject in Ice Age documentaries due to its size and power, but it is absolutely dwarfed by a stellar sea cow. Although I'm still a bit doubtful that this bear couldn't simply tear through the sea cow's thick hide or go for the head. Especially when a scimitar cat can apparently do all that to a shaggy woolly mammoth who is actively fighting against it. While there is fossil evidence that scimitar cats regularly hunted mammoth calves, and there are modern lions that hunt even adult elephants, those hunts are done by one specific pride in Botswana that A. attacks in the darkness of the night and B. overwhelms the elephant with their sheer numbers.
The male, injured during the cat's first attack, has fallen behind.
Making a fully grown mammoth die from blood loss requires a level of gore that this documentary for all ages obviously cannot show, so you're just left scratching your head if the narration forgot to tell you if scimitar cats are somehow venomous. You can read all about those elephant killing lions from Botswana in this old blog post by some guy who probably should have been the scientific advisor for this documentary. Hey, wait a minute! Sometimes the science even goes directly against what the popular or expected trope would be. Elasmotherium is a giant rhinoceros that used to be reconstructed with an iconic giant horn, but it is now believed to have just a big lump on its head, and Prehistoric Planet went with this new look despite it being the less alluring visual. And just as revolutionary as a big feathered dinosaur is the total opposite, a giant ground sloth not covered in fur.
Good grief, he's naked!
Considering this is an elephant-sized mammal in the tropics, this look is more plausible than the traditional shaggy look. And we still get to see hairy ground sloths, but in less expected environments like snowy forests or desert cliffs. If you have seen Macrauchenia in Walking with Beasts or any book, it is usually depicted with a trunk, but its extended nostrils were probably more likely to support a big inflatable nose. Which I might add is the one time in the entire documentary where the animation fails for me. Other examples of Prehistoric Planet avoiding the usual Ice Age tropes are Teratons that do not look like stereotypical vultures, Gigantopithecus that does not look like just an upscaled orangutan, and direwolves that don't look just like wolves. Fuck colossal biosciences. There are even some subtle details that you might not notice because the narration doesn't directly comment on it. For example, the stegodon's tusks are so close together that it cannot stick its own trunk fully between them, so most of the time you can see the trunk hanging over the side of the tusks. The first shot we see of the terror bird is its sickle-clawed foot, which perfectly mirrors the first shot of the velociraptor in season 1 and makes it clear that birds are theropod dinosaurs. Modern Seriemas have this sickle claw too, and you can even see the terror bird using its sickle claw in the same way a modern Seriema does. The Thylacoleo has big sharp buck teeth, and the Procoptodon has only one toe on each foot. The deep calls of the moa are based on emus and cassowaries.
His calls are full of information.
And the growls of the saber-toothed cats are based on pumas because unlike lions and tigers, it appears that saber-toothed cats lacked the throat bone anatomy that allows big cats to roar. You probably didn't even realize that these cats did not roar. This time they have also done a better job at making the animals' color patterns fit their environment. In the first 2 seasons, they reused the same dinosaur models, which is how you end up with things like the blue Coryphoraptor, which might look nice in a rainforest but completely out of place in an exposed desert. But here we get white Homotherium in the open tundra and patterned Homotherium in the grasslands. And you can tell this is a more northern Arctodus specimen from its fur being more reminiscent of polar bears.
Ich möchte ein Eisbär sein, im kalten Polar. Dann müsste ich nicht mehr schreien, alles wäre so klar.
In terms of animation, this is the most photorealistic any piece of media has ever looked. The CGI looks better than in Disney's Lion King remakes, and those were massive theatrical releases by the biggest film studio on the planet. Fittingly, it is especially the cats that look absolutely flawless in every shot. Like that's just straight up a real lion. And it's even better with the saber-toothed cats, where you know no modern big cat has such fangs or body proportions or even fur patterns, and yet they just look so real. A lot of the close-up shots like the Arctotherium or marabou stork or sloth, or every single time the Gigantopithecus is on screen, also feel like the animators are just flexing on you.
Oh, how magnificent it would be! A Gigantopithecus like me could learn to do like you humans do.
And that's before you get into all the crazy physics interactions. The first 2 seasons of Prehistoric Planet already had a lot of feathered creatures, but with its cast of mostly furry mammals, this season has really upped the ante in terms of details like how the mammoth's fur is blown by wind and catching snow in the blizzard, or how this sloth is sinking into the snow, or how this Diprotodon's whiskers are dripping wet, or how good the dried up mud on the fur of this Elasmotherium looks, or the wet fur on this mammoth, or the subtle twitching ear of this giant fossa. If I wanted to showcase everything I wanted to praise, this video would be the running time of all 5 episodes combined. The science segments at the end of each episode are way better implemented than in season 2, because instead of just explaining one specific animal, they are usually about the episode's overall theme. This is thanks to the episode's titles being not as beholden to biomes as the previous seasons. The first episode is titled The Big Freeze and is implied to be about the beginning of the Ice Age.
The challenge of surviving the Big Freeze has only just begun.
So the science segment can just explain what caused the Pleistocene Ice Age and that there are glacial and interglacial periods.
Trees from the time of the dinosaurs.
We couldn't even make it through the first episodes without dinosaurs being mentioned. The second episode is titled New Lands and, aside from the Flores segment, is exclusively about the Great American Biotic Interchange. So of course this is the topic of the science segment as well. Every segment is a culture clash between a North American and a South American animal, and it's usually pretty clear which animal originates from where.
Their ancestors came from the forests of South America, but ventured here, the scrublands of North America, during the Ice Age. Their ancestors have lived here for 50 million years.
Unfortunately, not every segment of the show discloses the location, despite literally only a single sentence being necessary each time. The third episode is titled Desert Lands, so it does not get confused with the Deserts episode from season 1. Most of the episode is set in Australia, but you have to wait until the science segment to actually hear the name Australia being spoken. You can probably deduce the setting simply because they are featuring marsupials like kangaroos, but you would not know that the climbing sloth is in South America or the giant moa in New Zealand. The fourth episode is titled Grasslands, the one biome you could never have had in Prehistoric Planet's Cretaceous seasons. And while we do see some grasslands, this episode feels a bit more cobbled together than the rest. The whole segment of the Gigantopithecus in the forest is only connected to the episode's theme because grasslands make his natural habitat disappear. And the mammoth dust storm scene almost feels like it should have been in a desert-themed episode instead. This is the only episode where the science segment feels more disconnected, as it is just a general showcase of how large some Ice Age animals got, with some cute primeval-esque shots of the animals in modern day.
A new, smaller hunter had arrived, hungry for all those big Ice Age animals.
Also, they tease humans at the end, completely spoiling the final shot of the following episode. The fifth and final episode is titled The Big Melt, so by this point the Pleistocene is apparently already over again.
It's the end of the Ice Age.
Despite how vague this title is, I think the showrunners did a good job establishing a theme, as we see several Holocene animals like stellar sea cow and elephant birds, and see a case of an Ice Age animal being directly affected by spreading forests in the form of Megaloceros. And while the La Brea tar pits existed throughout the entire Pleistocene, saving this most iconic of Ice Age localities for the final episode and the final science segment also seems appropriate. And they still tie it into the science segment's actual topic, the question of why these Ice Age animals went extinct. Climate change gets brought up, but also man-made fires destroying the environment. This is a very North America specific explanation that somewhat ignores the more direct hunting of most animals that made it into the Holocene. On that note, I think it was a bit of a missed opportunity to not theme the episodes around specific points in time within the Pleistocene, dedicating each episode to either a glacial or interglacial period. The segments constantly jump back and forth within the last 2 million years, which feels misleading when some of these creatures were only around during the earliest or the latest parts of the Pleistocene. Anhydriodon, for example, is a Pliocene species which barely made it into the early Pleistocene.
Otters have left rivers behind to make the most of these new grasslands. They are now the kings of the African plains.
The narration is at odds with the fact that these otters went extinct pretty soon into the Ice Age. And then the Gigantopithecus segment is about forests drying out in the Ice Age, but then you're wondering why it wouldn't flourish again once the ice melts.
The Big Melt is the start of a golden age for elephant birds.
Elephant birds were still around when the Great Pyramids of Gizeh were built.
Ice Age moas.
Moas were still around while medieval Europe was dying from the bubonic plague.
These Ice Age giants are relatives of manatees.
Stellar sea cow was still alive while Benjamin Franklin was doing his kite experiments. I think the final episode could have been all about post-Ice Age animals of the Holocene, but I guess it would get repetitive if most of these are big flightless island birds. And while we are nitpicking, let's tackle what has somehow become the biggest controversy of this entire documentary: how the animals are identified, or rather, how they often are not. The narration goes out of its way to avoid dropping scientific names.
But this is a huge sloth. A giant ground sloth. A family of very sleepy sloths. Unlike any you've seen before.
Either because Tom Hiddleston is less adept at pronouncing them than David Attenborough, or because the showrunners thought they would be too complicated for the audience. This topic got galvanized when a popular content creator publicly agreed with this executive decision, and then got swarmed by me and others because in our opinion, people who would be interested in these prehistoric animals and who might want to learn more about them would benefit from having a name as a starting point when trying to look these up in a book or online. If your kid is in their dinosaur phase, they want to know everything. everything. They read books, they browse Wikipedia articles, they want to know the names. If they watch a dinosaur movie, they want to be able to point at the screen and go, I know the name of this dinosaur because I read all about it.
There are over 50 species of Ice Age sloth, but this one could be the bravest.
Cool! I would like to know which species this one is. You need to drop the genus name only once, then you can go back to just calling it a sloth again. Imagine if all those unique looking theropods in Prehistoric Planet were just labeled under the umbrella term Raptor. In case you are wondering, this sloth genus is called Diabolotherium. You're telling me kids wouldn't love the name Diabolotherium? There are some common names that see plenty of use throughout the documentary, like woolly mammoth, cave hyena, woolly rhinoceros, Columbian mammoth, elephant bird, and so on. And these are perfectly fine. It just gets difficult when you have multiple different species of which neither are given any distinct names, like Glyptotherium and Dodicurus both being simply referred to as armadillos.
Including this young Ice Age armadillo. An armadillo the size of a car.
At least to me, hearing a scientific sounding name also gives a depicted animal that aura of legitimacy. When I hear Tom Hiddleston say,
A pack of enormous otters.
it sounds more like he's just observing something absurd happening, as opposed to if you introduced him as an Hydriodon, the giant otter. Otherwise, you may also get the wrong impression that during the Ice Age there existed only these giant armadillos and giant otters, and that our modern day small species are direct descendants of these giant ones.
A terror bird. Maybe not that terrifying.
The people who have never heard about terror birds before will wonder how it got that name in the first place. And the people who have heard about terror birds before will wonder why this one is not as large as the ones they saw in every single other documentary. The lack of clarification has actually led to one of the dubs making a factual error. The German dub calls this giant ground sloth Megatherium.
Ein Megatherium, auch bekannt als Riesenfaultier.
Because if you wouldn't know any better, that's the first animal name that comes to mind when you think of giant ground sloths. But this is actually a more obscure genus called Eremotherium. So what could have been an opportunity for a German viewer to learn about a new Ice Age animal is completely floundered instead. The documentary has 2 distinct species of Smilodon and 3 distinct species of Homotherium. But when all you hear is Saber-toothed cat and scimitar-toothed cat, which they even mess up themselves.
A family of scimitar-toothed cats. The saber-toothed cats have been tracking the mammoth herd.
How are you supposed to understand what's the difference between sabers and scimitars? The name Smilodon is spoken sometimes,
Smilodon. A saber-toothed cat.
but not in every Smilodon segment, which will make you wonder if you see a saber-toothed cat that isn't explicitly identified as Smilodon, does that mean this is some other species of saber-toothed cat? There are some scientific genus names that are regularly used as common names, like Macrauchenia, Diprotodon, Gigantopithecus, and Megaloceros, and those are all great and helpful. They just make it more confusing why it's not consistent with other creatures.
This strange type of Ice Age kangaroo makes the most of it.
There's a bizarre species of carnivorous kangaroo that I'm sure people would love to know more about, but when they look up Ice Age kangaroo on Google, they just get the other Ice Age kangaroo from Prehistoric Planet. Also the character in Ice Age 4 that is based on this specific kangaroo species.
And this is a strange type of rhino.
Typing Ice Age rhino into Google is similarly unfruitful. Hell, considering most images of Elasmotherium still show it with the giant horn, there's a good chance someone could see one of these images and not even realize this is the same rhinoceros as the one they saw in Prehistoric Planet. To be fair, its name is mentioned in the science segment.
Elasmotherium.
But I would love to know the name when I am first introduced to the creature and not at the end of the episode. This is also when we first hear the name Arctotherium.
Arctotherium.
2 entire episodes after we last saw it. And right before we see another short-faced bear, which will make you wonder if this is another Arctotherium or not. All of this is compounded by how lax this documentary is with disclosing locations. Instead of continents, you will often hear vague directions.
For millennia, they've thrived here in the icy north. Here on the coast. For animals living thousands of miles to the south. Here in the tropics, forests are expanding even faster than in the north.
This season also has much more rapid editing between segments, often just straight up omitting establishing shots. We cut straight from these otters eating a zebra to Gigantopithecus, so as a layman you would never know that we are now in Southeast Asia and not still Africa. The episodes also love giving segments cliffhangers that will make you completely lost as to where which one takes place. When the cave lions start their descent into the cave bear's den, we suddenly cut to a completely different segment with ground sloths.
As the lions close in, outside there's a change in the weather.
Even the narration makes you think these locations are related when they are not. These sloths only live in North America, while cave bears are only known from Europe. The editors got so confused that even a North American dire wolf ended up in this European cave somehow. When we cut from a marsupial lion to the close-up of a moa's feathers, I thought I was looking at an emu and that we were still in Australia, because when I think of New Zealand, I do not think of sand dunes. Maybe the science segment about land bridges made them think every creature was able to reach every continent like some kind of Ice Age Pangea. Finally, the last criticism this documentary has faced ties back to what I showed near the beginning of the video.
In this harsh Ice Age world, looking after each other makes the difference. Mother Bear has learned her lesson, and a lesson learned. Maybe a valuable lesson has been learned.
This season has way too many happy endings. There are some truly suspenseful moments in this series. The cave lions closing in on the cave bear cubs is like something out of a horror movie. The giant storks are doing their best Artsdarkid impressions. The Smilodon mother being trapped in tar while dire wolves are closing in on her cubs had me at the edge of my seat, and yet
She finds the strength to break free. This family has been lucky.
when you watch all of these in a row, the illusion of danger is completely shattered. Even when the Megalosaurus gets its antlers stuck in the undergrowth, which seems like the perfect showcase why this giant deer went extinct at the end of the Ice Age, it luckily sheds its antlers at this exact moment.
A miraculous escape.
The cuter a baby animal, the more likely it is to make it out alive, especially when a documentary tries to tug at your heartstrings by making it seem like the baby might actually die.
But for the calf, this is a suffocating disaster. A third of mammoth calves die before they reach a year old.
In fact, this season has so many cute baby animals that I could not decide which 5 of them should be in this year's Dromies, which is why I actually made a straw poll where you can vote which 5 of these baby animals should get to be nominated for the award of cutest baby in Prehistoric Planet Ice Age. The link is in the pinned comment. Maybe this was a direct reaction to the previous Prehistoric Planet seasons, which featured more child predators than there were on Epstein Island, but as I said at the beginning, Mesozoic reptiles with their huge egg clutches are clearly expendable, while for a large mammal that gives birth to only 1 or 2 offspring, every baby counts. This season just happens to be focused around these large mammals, and even the few featured birds happen to be species that follow this reproduction strategy. I think all the fake outs might also be why I have seen many people resonate with the Gigantopithecus segment, because for once a creature is looking for a goal and fails to achieve it. Watching this guy come to the conclusion that he might be the last of his kind is heartbreaking, especially when his facial expressions already look so uncannily human. But his tragedy is what makes him far more memorable than all the other creatures' fortunate turn of events. With Gigantopithecus' story ending in an uncertain way, the question is what is next for Prehistoric Planet itself? Will there be a second Ice Age season? I have seen some people point towards unused scenes in the openings of the episodes, but I do not think those are teasers for another season because the scenarios seem too similar to what we already saw in the episodes themselves. These cave hyenas following the river is just what happens off screen between their first and second encounter with the Megalosaurus. And this is just what if the scimitar cats actually managed to kill one of the woolly rhinos. I doubt they would show the same hunt twice just for the alternative outcome. However, just like with season 1 of Prehistoric Planet, you do not go through the trouble of painstakingly creating all these models just to use them only once. And there are still so many Ice Age creatures which you have not seen yet. We didn't even get to see the difference between mammoths and mastodons. On the other hand, with the first episode being titled The Big Freeze and the last episode being titled The Big Melt, this season already seems like a complete package. Maybe a next season could be more focused around the human influence and be titled Prehistoric Planet Stone Age, but at that point you lose the whole nature documentary appeal. Overall, despite some specific criticisms I have with the writing and narration, I think Prehistoric Planet Ice Age is still as brilliant as ever. Yeah, you could probably tell I was gonna come to this conclusion the moment you saw the title of this video, so anyway, I wish you a happy new year.
What on earth are those?
What are those?
If I have to hear one of those one more time, I will kill something!